It's not unusual that an office policy may say the commission's X% cooperatively and Y% if it's sold in-house. You can accept open or exclusive listings, and you can employ general mass media advertising campaigns that reach people who live in the same area. That's what we were talking about, the mass mailings. Okay. We talked a little bit about the articles. And we're going to talk about some of the disciplines if you are found in violation. But first of all, here's some dangerous words and phrases. Like I say, we have to be looking for these red flags at all time. First of all, I'd like to lower the commission, but the board has a rule. Now, our association has no rules when it comes to commission. This is the rate that everyone charges. No, that would not be competitive, pro-competitive, would it? Let's see. If John Doe was really professional or ethical, he would have joined the board. You know, this is an interesting one. Are we as realtors and member of local, state, national, are we the only ones in Florida that can sell real estate? No, we can't. Anyone that has a Florida real estate salesperson's license can sell real estate in Florida. So that would not be a good, I found in the past, people that are not realtors, not members of other boards, usually they come into the office for assistance. We help them as much as we can, of course, promoting our own listings, but a lot of times they end up, you know, if you send them to Paisley, they end up saying, you know what, just pay me a referral fee and you take care of it. Okay, if they're from out of the area. This is one of my favorites. Let him stay in his own market. This is our territory. Sounds like something out of the Wild West, doesn't it? If you have a Florida real estate license, where can you sell real estate? In the whole state of Florida, right? I have a great story that exemplifies this. I had an agent named Florence, and she had a daughter who was in med school at FSU in Tallahassee. And she had 2 more daughters coming right behind the first daughter. So she was going to have 3 kids there for several years. So the first year she decided, you know what, the board and everything is so expensive at the college, I'm going to buy a condominium. And then the kids can all stay there, you know, and hopefully when they finally get done, I'll have some equity in something. So she did. Well, the word got around the medical school that this is what she did, and Florence started getting calls from other parents. You know, this is a great idea. I only have 1 child, but we could rent out a bedroom to somebody else, and that would help offset the costs. So Florence started showing condominiums in Tallahassee. I think total she ended up selling 26, if my memory serves me right. So needless to say, she knew the Tallahassee condo market. Well, one day she called me. She'd stay at the condo where her daughters were, and she called me and she says, Marilyn, I called to show this one condo, and they said that I couldn't show it because I'm not a member of their association. And I said, really? And I said, what's the broker's name and number? So she gave that to me, and I called the broker, and we had a chat, and Florence got a call back that she could certainly show the property. But guess what happened? The buyer said, you know what, there's other units in that complex, and they're just not very friendly people. So just skip showing us that one, and we'll move on. So what did they really do for their seller? They lost a potential buyer. So, you know, some associations do have rules regarding cooperative commission, so you might want to make sure you have a commission agreement signed. But generally speaking, it's not a problem. Okay, we talked about some of the articles. Now let's talk about what happens. If you're in violation of an article, let's say, remember I left the business card at Mary's listing, and she thought I was trying to steal her customer, Article 12, and false advertising, Article 16. She would call the association office here, and she would ask for the paperwork to file a grievance, an ethics grievance against myself and my broker. She would then fill out, it's a 1-page form. There is no charge for grievance. Grievance and ethics has nothing to do with money, honey. Nothing. What it is it's set up to put us one level. Remember we talked about those people that are licensed but don't belong to associations? This gives customers recourse. If we know of somebody that's involved in an ethical violation, it's our duty to report it and see it through. Then, let's say this was against me, I would receive the paperwork saying a violation had been placed against me along with the paperwork that was attached, telling the story of what happened. I would then have 10 days to fill out my own paperwork along with documents or whatever I wanted to add, and it would then go to the association office. The next step is the association office gives it to the grievance committee. Remember we talked about the grievance committee. It's important to understand the grievance committee doesn't decide right, wrong, guilty, not guilty. They don't decide any of that. They just say, okay, if Marilyn left the business card with that on the back, could she have been trying to procure the customer? Okay, I think it should go forward to professional standards. Then it would go forward. Now there's the hearing. At that hearing would be myself as the chairperson and about 4 of your fellow realtors, which is helpful because who understands this business any better than other realtors? At that time, the complainant, who would be Mary, would tell her side of the story. She would present any documents. She could bring an attorney if she wanted. She would tell her whole story. The interesting part here, attorneys can come, but they get really upset because anybody can ask anybody a question at any time. Okay? You know, attorneys want to, you know, say, what's the word they say when they jump up and say, the word escapes me. I object, okay? They can't object at these hearings. Okay, anybody can ask anything at any time. Okay, so then it would be my turn. I'd tell my story, I'd present documents, do whatever I wanted to. Again, questions back and forth. At the end of the hearing, the Professional Standards Committee would say, Marilyn and Mary and brokers, do you feel it's been a fair hearing? Have you been able to say everything you want, ask the questions you want, present evidence as you wanted? And Mary and I agree, yes, it's been a fair hearing. We are then dismissed from the hearing. Okay? This is where professional standards goes to work. I've sat in on some that they're kind of cut and dry, and 20 minutes later we have the paperwork done. And I've had others where we've been there 7 hours and literally called a witness back, that they've been that complex. So a decision is made, and the parties are notified in mail within a week as to the outcome of the professional standards hearing. Okay, let's say someone that is in violation is found guilty. There are disciplines involved in this, because don't forget it has nothing to do with money. Okay, the minimum discipline would be a letter of warning that would be placed in the member's file. It wouldn't go anywhere, it would just stay there. There could be a letter of reprimand placed in the member's file, which could move with them should they join another association. They could be required to attend the ethics portion of the board indoctrination course or any other appropriate course or seminar to reasonably take into consideration cost, location, and duration. So they could be back with us here today. We won't ask if anybody's here for that reason. There could be fines. This just changed not long ago. Appropriate and reasonable fines not to exceed, are you ready, $15,000. Yeah, that's a biggie. $15,000 probably wouldn't be a first offense, and it would probably be a very serious offense. So anywhere up to $15,000. A member could be placed on probation for not less than 30 days, not more than a year. They could be suspended for not less than 30 days, not more than a year. Or the biggie, they could be expelled from membership with no reinstatement privilege. Okay, along with that, of course, goes your MLS privileges. So basically, you're out of business. Okay, so those are the disciplines that can happen in an ethics hearing. Okay, now what we're going to talk about is, remember we said ethics had nothing to do with money, honey? The next thing we're going to talk about is all about money, honey. Okay, we're going to talk first of all about arbitration. What we're going to do here is we're going to use a case study. And, we'll change the names just to make it a little more fun. And then at the end, with a raise of hands, you can tell which way you think it goes. Okay, arbitration, as we said, is all about money. It's important to understand that the Professional Standards Committee is tasked with finding one broker gets the entire commission. So there's no compromises or, whatever. First of all, if you have a problem with another broker, the first thing you do is go to your broker, and your broker will call the other broker. Now, the question is, do reasonable people work it out now? Yeah, reasonable people work it out now. But the next question is everybody reasonable? And the answer to that is no, and that's why we have arbitration. Okay, so here's a case study. Let's use two people's names, John and Mary. Okay, John gets a call in from his broker, and he says, John, I have a great referral for you. There's a doctor moving into the area. He's going to be working at LRMC and Florida Hospital Waterman, so he wants to be somewhere in that general vicinity. He's looking for a pool home. He has kids and that kind of stuff. But it's really going to entail more than, usual, John. You're going to have to pick him up at Orlando Airport on Friday night. They just have the weekend to look, and then they need to get back. So are you up to the task? And John says, sure. So John, first of all, calls the doctor, and the doctor says, well, I'll be honest, you probably need to talk to my wife. He says, we're in about the $800,000 price range. He said, I'd like a little private office tucked away somewhere if you can find something with that, and a garage big enough for my car, but other than that, talk to my wife. So John calls the wife, and she fills him on what she likes, and the kids would love a pool, and all this kind of thing. So John really does his homework. He finds homes. He even goes and previews them before they get there to make sure they're right. Friday night comes, he meets them at the airport. He's got goodies for the kids, and everything's fine. They're driving back from the airport, and they're kind of history buffs, so they wanted to stay at the Lakeside Inn in Mount Dora. So John takes them there, and the doctor says, John, could you pick us up about 10 o'clock in the morning? That way we can feed the kids and be on our way. And John says, sure. So John's there right on time, 10 o'clock in the morning. He takes them to the first house, and as soon as the wife walks in, she goes, oh man, no, this is really contemporary. It's really stark looking. No, I'm not feeling it. He takes them to house number 2, and it's love at first sight. The doctor sees a 3-car garage. He finds a little office tucked behind the kitchen. The kids are heading straight ahead to the pool. The wife is saying, this is more like it, much more traditional. So they're really impressed with house number 2. John shows them number 3, 4, 5, nothing. The end of the day brings them back to house number 2, and it's love at second sight. They're placing the furniture, and things are looking good. So the doctor says, John, this seems to be the house. He said, these kids are getting hungry. It's been a long day. Would you mind picking us up at 10 tomorrow morning again? We'll take one more look, get the contract done, and then we'll be heading for the airport at 1 o'clock. John says that's fine. He goes home, even does another search to see if anything new came on the market. Nothing happened. So the next day, he's up bright and early. He's heading over to pick them up at 10 o'clock at the Lakeside Inn. He's crossing over 441, and wouldn't you know it, he gets T-boned. He's in a vehicle accident, okay? Now, he's okay, but I mean, the police come, the ambulances come, all that. They put John on the stretcher and take him to the hospital, and they get him to the hospital. Of course, his cell phone, he doesn't know where that's gone. It's thrown to the back of the car. So anyway, after they check him out, they finally release him in the afternoon. He gets to a phone. He calls the Lakeside Inn, and he says, I'd like to talk to Dr. or Mrs. So-and-so, and of course they have checked out. Well, John gets a good night's sleep that night and heads into the office the next morning. First thing he does is pull up MLS and looks at house number 2. It has a new status. It's now pending. So John can't help himself. He calls the listing agent and he says, I gotta ask, did Dr. and Mrs. So-and-so buy the house? And the listing agent says, how'd you know, John? Now this is where John went to his broker and told him the story. John's broker called the other broker, and this is where they should have worked it out. But somebody wasn't reasonable, and it went to arbitration. Okay, so you've heard the story. What happened? This is a real case study. So how many of you think that, I didn't finish the story. Okay. So it's 10 after 10 Sunday morning, and the doctor and his wife are saying, well, where's John? He's usually on time. And they don't know what to do, so we'll call a cell phone. Well, they call a cell phone, and of course, nobody answers. So they say, well, we'll call the office. So they call the office, but nobody's at the office until noon on Sundays. So they don't know what to do. They walk down off the porch, they walk around the corner, and they see an open house sign, and they walk in, and there's Mary, okay? So Mary says, well, welcome to my open house. And they said, well, Mary, you know, we're not interested in your open house, but we just don't know what to do. We've been stood up by our realtor. And Mary says, who's your realtor? And they say, John. And Mary says, geez, that doesn't sound like John. Let me try to call him. She tries, and of course she gets no answer either. And she finally says, well, what can I do to help you? And they said, we want to take another look at this house and write a contract. So she blocks up the open house, shows them the house, and writes the contract. So that's where Mary comes into the picture. Okay, so this goes to arbitration because we didn't have reasonable people to work it out. Should they have worked out a split, a referral fee, something? Sure, they should have. But they opted to go to arbitration. Arbitration, the process is the same. You call the association office and get the paperwork, but there's one difference. There's a $500 fee to file an arbitration, okay? Like I said, we're just starting with That's All About Money, honey, with the $500 fee that is paid by both parties. The procuring cause, the one that is awarded the commission does get their $500 back. Okay, so how many of you think that John's broker was awarded the entire commission? A good number of people, usually about 90%, think John's broker was awarded the commission. How about Mary? Okay, a few of you. In this case, Mary's broker was awarded the commission. Now we have to look at why. Okay, years ago, they had what they called the vestibule theory. Whoever walked them through the door was the procuring cause. Well, that didn't hold water very long, so they came up with the contract theory. Whoever wrote the contract was the procuring cause. Well, that didn't hold water very long either, so then they came up with the definition, a successful chain of events that leads to a successful closing. Okay, under that definition, they had a couple sub-definitions. Did the doctor and his wife feel abandoned when it was 10 after 10 and they were at the Lakeside Inn? Did they feel abandoned? Yeah, they did. Did they feel alienated? What do we do? Where do we go? We don't know the area, you know. Yeah, they did. They did. And was there a time frame? Yeah, they had to head to the airport by 1 o'clock, didn't they? For this reason, the entire commission was awarded to Mary's broker, along with the $500 fee to file the arbitration. Okay, the next process we're going to talk about is mediation. And I'd like to say right up front